I just pressed play.
Welcome,
I just
everybody. This is the
pressed
Trampled
play.
Underfoot podcast show, and your hosts are Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajedo. We're here live on the YouTube, on the TubeYube. Here we are. What's going on, Mark?
Oh, nothing. No, I'm a happy guy. I've been saving up for close to 5 years now for a mini split air conditioning unit for my shop. It was installed today, and brother, having that little room AC for the last 5 years, all it did was it kept the temperature about 10 degrees cooler than the outside, which sounds good until you figure that it's 100 degrees outside and you're in there and it's 90.
Yeah.
Well, it was 94. He got it purged, pulled the vacuum on it, got everything all set. It started cooling, and we were talking in there. He's showing me the remote, and it came down 5 degrees just in the time that he was standing there talking. And it was 94 outside, and it was 77 in the shop. And oh my God, did that feel good! Even on high, it's just a gentle breeze that floated right across my back as I'm sitting at the desk. And oh man, I'm happy, and I know it.
You're in Wonderland.
I'm in Wunderland.
Well, good, because without AC,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I don't know. It would be a
Yeah,
miserable. It would be a miserable time to even think, to sit and
yeah.
think.
I hear you. I tell you what, it was everything all told was $3,750. That includes the
Whoa, whoa.
electrician coming out and everything.
Talking hundreds. Don't hit me with those things. No, no, no. If you're gonna do
Well,
that, break it down into 3,300 or something like that to soften it, and even then, bring a coupon. Go ahead.
3750. But I have a friend in Massachusetts, one of my channel members, and he's got a fishing buddy. They were talking one day, and he knew that I was having this installed. And that's what this fishing buddy does. His job, he's a HVAC installer. He's a contractor, rather. And he asked him, he says, you know those Mitsubishi mini splits that they're putting in? Yeah. He says, what are you charging for a 12,000 BTU unit, which is what I got? And he says, well, depending upon how difficult the install is, he says anywhere from 6 to 8,000. So he came back to me that day and says, dude, they're doing yours for 3750. You got a deal. Dive on that, man. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So, I mean, I understand prices being higher in a big city like Boston, but not, that's almost double. His minimum price was almost double. And I'm like, wow. But I'm telling you, brother, worth every penny so far. And it doubles as a heater. So in the wintertime, I can keep it up. I can just set it for 45 degrees so none of my paints and stuff freeze in there and I don't have to worry about it anymore. So I'm a happy guy. Mitsubishi Mini Split. Hashtag not sponsored.
Well, good. So it's basically like a different experience now.
Oh, yeah, completely different. And as soon as tomorrow or Friday, no, tomorrow or Thursday, I've got to take the little room AC out and pull the plywood down that I was using, and I can have my door back now because I had it sitting in the doorway and the door blocked open for the last 3 years. So I can get that back. I'm not running little space heaters in the wintertime anymore. Oh man, yeah, I'm a happy guy.
Well,
It's amazing how we prize our creature comforts the older we get.
yeah, it's true. It's true.
When I was in my 20s, I'd have been out there at 90 degrees in the shop. I didn't care. I'd have just been sweating on stuff. But now, nah, screw that. Life's too short to sweat, man.
Remember how that sweat used to bead off the skin? It just
Mm-hmm.
rolled downhill and you'd keep going. Like I
Right off my
remember,
forehead and onto the wood, and I would just sand over it, and it would evaporate. That
yeah.
was grain popping with sweat.
Do you remember when you were young and you had no leg hairs? I don't know if this is the. Some people are different, but like
Mm-hmm.
your legs were just smooth. You were a young boy, and when you'd sweat riding bike or even lifting weights with friends or doing exercise or this or that, playing some game. Well, I don't know because here it's Florida, so it's hot all the time. But you'd be drenched, and it would be
Mm-hmm.
just showering downhill, contouring with the
Yeah.
and you were like a seal. You were like a wet seal, like
Yes.
water sliding down rubber. But then when you got hair, when hair started going, then little beads accumulate, and now it became a different story.
Yep.
Do you remember that change in your?
Vaguely, I never really paid attention to it, but I can flash back and think, yeah, okay, I can remember that, yeah. But yeah, it's playing street football and what have you out there running around. It was two-hand touch, but occasionally tackles did happen.
Did you
But
ever play flag football?
no, it was two-hand touch.
But do you know the reference point?
Yes, I do. I've seen flag football played, but
Was that a thing from? Was that not a thing from the '60s into the '70s and such?
yeah, it was. It's just that we were a bunch of kids. We didn't have flags or anything like that. And school, the football teams all played tackle. So, but we were on paved streets in a cul-de-sac,
Yeah,
and we couldn't play tackle because you'd kill a guy. So it was two-hand touch. You had to touch him with two hands.
we
None
played
of
flag.
this. None of this single.
We
Hey.
played flag football,
Hmm.
but we played flag football not at home like you're saying on the street.
Hmm.
We tossed the ball. We would play touch, like you're
Hmm.
saying. Now thinking about it, it was more like touch and hold on and
Hmm.
yank to the
Hmm.
side and stuff,
Yeah.
but without toppling. Like we did
Yeah.
rules, but in school when we were kids in kindergarten, in elementary school,
Hmm.
they had boxes of that you'd tie around
Hmm.
your waist.
Yeah. A
There
little
was a
belt.
specific
Yeah.
either Velcro. I forget now, but
Yeah.
the point is that they had to rip the flag off of you.
Yeah. It was Velcro. Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, not really just those first years, they set everything up, and there was the other team, and they'd pick. All right,
Hmm.
you're with me. Okay, you're with me, and you'd sit there waiting, and you're saying, are they gonna pick me?
Hmm. Yeah.
Am I part of the in crowd, or am I one of the? I mean, am I gonna be liked? Am I gonna get? And then they'd pick me, and you say, yeah, okay, I'm gonna, and I'm ready to. And I remember that in one of those early games that I got the ball,
Hmm.
and I freaking said, I'm gonna make everything of it, and I freaking bolted, and I
Hmm.
bolted, and people were, and they were saying, ah, ah, and they're screaming, and I don't know what they're screaming, and I turned my head and said, it's the other way, it's the other way.
Score points for the other team.
The other team should have hired me, but I was booking down the lane,
Yeah, but
dude.
then now you had to turn around and go for go the other direction. Oh man, that sucks.
Things like that. Did stuff like that ever happen? As kids and stuff. Did you
Oh
ever
yeah.
probably? Yeah.
Oh man, there was one time we were playing baseball, and the home plate. The plate was there was no plate there, but you knew where home plate was supposed to be. And
That, that's not very accurate.
well, we were playing at the school, you know, and they had taken all the bases and the plate and everything, and they were stored in the sports locker. But the chalk was still there, and you knew where home plate was. And I was catcher, and it was a little bit. They had run the sprinklers overnight, so the ground was still a little bit soft. And this guy hit the ball, and it went straight up in the air. but out in front of me, just enough to where I had to move to get it. So I'm trying to catch him and, pop him out. Well, I had on engineer boots. And, the kind that have the silver ring on the side and then the straps that go around and they all hook to that silver ring. And I started trying to run, and the ground was so slick, my feet are moving a mile a minute, and I was going nowhere. The catcher sees this, so he starts hauling towards me. I finally get just enough traction. We run into each other, and neither one of us caught the ball. So it was an easy out, but
Let me ask you a side question that's going to go from left field, no pun intended. Are you ready?
sure.
I never looked into this. So I'm going to ask you
Mm-hmm.
because I'm sure you're going to explain. I'm hopeful and actually, strangely enough, curious and think
Uh-oh.
that you're going to answer. All that I just said is important.
Okay.
By the Catcher in the Rye, which I never read,
Me
but I
either.
know the history. But I know the history of it.
Mm-hmm.
Does the title suggest, at least in one instance, because things can have double meaning, the person coming from out in left field, out in the nowhere, or does it have another meaning that's completely a specific? Because that is and the reason I that just slam just opened up in my mind is because you used certain key words, including catcher. So
Mm-hmm.
I just had to throw that from left field. Are they saying that, or is there something different that they're saying? Or do you know? I'm not trying to like, if you don't know, or
I've never read it. I know a little bit about it. Um, so you're talking about just the title itself?
yeah, because catcher
Mm-hmm.
in the rye.
Well, that could
I'm
have.
I'm I'm using, well, just to say it, just without knowing what a sentence is,
Mm-hmm.
and just because you use the word, and for some reason I connected it with sports and it popped into my
Mm-hmm.
head. Sometimes word plays exist. I use
Mm-hmm.
word plays all the time. I don't know this book. I was assuming you probably had read it, but none
No,
of us
I
have.
haven't.
But still, there seems to be something going on, which we could find out in a split second. I get it,
Sure. Yeah.
but the exercise is, within the possibilities. What
Well,
would you answer?
catcher could mean several things. I mean, there are birds, fly catchers. So the
Ah, that's
catcher,
good.
it could be that. It could be anything. Um,
And let me tell you something else, Mark.
man.
No, no, we'll I guess we'll solve this one in a snap. But I like the little space that's carved out, and I like the fact that you threw in that some birds are catchers, and then it's found in the rye, and then it gives an inch. See, this is a great.
Well,
No, but,
see.
but 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 let me say this one bit. It also triggered just now
Mhm.
with this thing in my mind, just images that pop in for whatever reason. We're human beings. Do you remember the movie? I know it has no, but still, remember the movie where it was like, if you build it, they will come. Remember that
Yeah,
one?
Field of Dreams. Yeah.
Field of Dreams. For some reason, all these things have
Well,
converged.
and
Go ahead. Go ahead.
and that's part of what I was getting ready to say. I don't know much about birds. I know less about birds than I know about that book. It could be possible that a flycatcher or a catcher in the rye was an oddity, which is why it stood out, because normally that bird wouldn't be in a field of rye. It would be off somewhere else, in the trees or hanging around the barn or what have you. It wouldn't be out in the field. That may be why it stood out as an oddity. I don't know if that's the case.
What What are people out there? Is there any answers that people are on? I mean, we can look at it again.
Sure.
We're using Google through other people instead of asking just directly.
Well, Linda has said right off the bat, Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger is a coming of age story about Holden Caulfield, a teenage boy grappling with alienation, phoniness, and the transition from childhood to adulthood. Okay.
Thank you for that,
Um,
Linda.
the novel narrated by Holden from a mental institution. Wow.
Oh,
Explores his struggles with identity loss and the complexities of the adult world. Okay.
wow.
That puts a totally different spin on it.
Well, let me also um, point to the elephant in the room for obvious reasons that you already know. We all already know. This is part of our collective history, anyhow. Um, the person that went to cross paths with John Lennon
Mm-hmm.
um, had a
Mark
copy,
David Chapman, yeah.
had a book, so there's that connotation too. And one of the reasons I never even approached, and I'd see it in the libraries and
Mm-hmm.
in the bookstores, and it always would catch my attention. And there was something that told me that just based on what I just said,
Mm-hmm.
that was like, pass. This that I just said, this that I
Mm-hmm.
just said, reveals something that I just want to lay out, even though it's straying slightly, but it's still within the thing that when we associate something with negativity,
Mm-hmm.
considering John Lennon and just the unspeakable tragedy that was, due to that, and these circumstantial or actually directly implicit, or not implicit, but connected, let's say, because of the found items that were part of that situation
Mm-hmm.
from the assassin's point
Yeah.
perspective. These are all items that float in the sphere of that situation,
Mm-hmm.
that cost the life of a human being, that gave a lot to the world in the form of art. And for me, certain, like for instance, I can't look at videos of the guy. I have in the past,
Mm-hmm.
but I reject it. I don't want to hear what he says. That book does the same thing. I don't. It's curious. I want to see, but no, no. Now, here's just to wrap up the thing and see what you say. In a way, in a very real way, that's an irrational reaction from me. I was not there.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
had nothing to do with it. I had nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
The book has nothing to do with it other than the man interpreted the book,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever had that book, and
Mm-hmm.
by sheer association, because now I know that connection, and I'm not the only one with that instinct. I don't think, or that sense. I reject it, while at the same time knowing that there's something there for me to learn, but on moral grounds and on disgust grounds, based on the associations that are irrational in one way, but it's a moral judgment in another about the loss of life of this person that did so much
Mm-hmm.
in the world of art and was an actual human being, that I've formed a little chain of mental picturettes that basically say, oh, not even touching that. Just wanted to mention that. What are
Okay.
your thoughts?
Well, I have several thoughts. I agree with you that it's irrational because the book had nothing to do with it. The book is innocent.
Hmm.
Um, but let me ask you this about that now. Would you feel the same way if you found out he owned the same car you drive right now?
Well, say that again. I couldn't hear you.
What would you say if you discovered he also drove the same car you're driving right now? Would
Oh,
that
okay.
make you want to sell that car to get rid of it so you're not associated with it?
Well, if you well, the answer I already, well, I haven't given directly, but so the answer is no.
Hmm.
But here's the thing: I already explained that it's irrational. So I
Yeah.
admit.
Okay.
So that's a recognition from
Yeah.
me
Okay.
that there's
Okay.
discrepancy. But then I explained
Yeah.
where and how that discrepancy exists
Hmm.
in the mind,
Right.
which is that we associate things.
Yeah.
And remember, this is another thing. So it's not rational, but it's a moral
But
judgment based on circumstantial things connecting with each other that one lays a judgment on
hmm
while not being rational in the sense of what you explained, which is the book is innocent.
yeah, it had nothing to do with anything.
Right? It's the mind
Right.
that, and it's not only the. So here's the thing: the person,
Hmm.
for whatever reason, did and did what he did, his
Yeah.
obsession, his this, that, and the other. He wanted to be famous, sickening.
Yeah.
That that person also came attached with not only that book in the thematic of the situation back then in 1980, I think it was.
Yeah.
Um, but he also came attached with his neighborhood, his family members, his this,
Sure.
his that, and his car, like you said. Um, but
Favorite album, favorite book. I mean, favorite movie, all that stuff. Yeah.
all that stuff. But from my vantage point as an observer, I rejected based on my, and again, I said it's irrational because
Yeah.
I understand it to be, or logical. It's not logical.
Right.
Um, but so what I'm getting at is this: I do not, and neither does any other human being. There's a sliding scale.
Sure.
Operate when we see situations in 100% logical ways.
No, we don't.
We arrive at conclusions
Hmm.
often enough, or more so,
Well,
based on feels, based on feels with some data coming to us. But when we put together that picture or that painting or that
hmm
thing, we reject it or we approve it or we're neutral depending. But just in this situation with Catcher in the Rye, that's a hang up of mine.
really. Okay. Well,
And I'm not the only
I
one.
mean, you know what? Let me ask you this about that. Do you really think it would benefit you to read it? Because there are thousands of books you and I have never read. I feel kind of ignorant in not having read that because I made it a point a few years ago to go back and read some of the classics, Red Badge of Courage and things of that nature. And that was one of them I never got to. So I feel kind of ignorant that I don't know the story. We, but we do that. We tend to do that. How many times has a singer or a songwriter or an actor uh, made a fool of themselves in public or said something stupid, and now all of a sudden people are like, oh no, boycott that movie, or oh no, can't stand that band because that guy's an idiot. We do that. Never mind the fact that we like the movie or we like the band, but he had to open his mouth and get political. Now I don't like him anymore, so to hell with him. I'm not buying his music anymore. To me, that's irrational.
Yeah, but here's the thing about this question over irrational, and just
Hmm.
like my what I brought to
Yeah.
you with this book
Hmm.
is that, and also it's speaking to what you said about, oh well, I feel that missing that, reading that, I have a gap
Hmm.
that I should have filled, but
Well,
then again, I have so many gaps because there's so many books and stuff. So
yeah,
so
we
so
can't read every book. So if you're not interested, you're not interested. It it doesn't it doesn't hurt you either way. Is what I'm getting at.
right, and so to position the situation is that it's true for obvious reasons,
Hmm.
like for like incredibly obvious reasons that there's so much books out there
Hmm.
that contain the thoughts, ideas,
Yeah.
and research, complaints of many a people across time,
Hmm.
um, that one person like you or I or anyone out there, it's not possible to consume all that.
Hmm.
Um, but we, but I'll say this, but we imagine a tier, or imagine a inverted pyramid,
Hmm.
and at the top of the broad inverted upside down pyramid
Hmm.
is all there is in
Sure.
books, and then the bottom is, and that's funneling down to you. So it's like a funnel. Let's say a
Yeah.
pyramid. It's like a funnel, and so all that's available
Hmm.
to fit it in that funnel is, it doesn't seem possible. But what we can do, and what we humans do,
Hmm.
and that's a truism in itself. That's a perfect
Hmm.
circle right there, enclosed and forever true. Um,
Everybody poops. That's right.
um, but what we do is, to different degrees, depending on the person's exploration, this and that,
Hmm.
we'll have category brackets
Yeah.
where stuff fits, where potential stuff can be stuffed in there. So
Yeah.
in terms of like let's say football, you brought up, touch football. Then I threw in flag football.
Hmm.
You and I both know, and everybody out there also knows that there's NFL,
Yeah.
and then the various teams. So imagine that block filled with that stuff. But we don't know, maybe, some of the inside scoop on
Hmm.
techniques, perhaps, or
Right.
strategic this or that. Some other people might, that are totally in.
Coaching and, offense and defense and all that other stuff. Yeah.
And even management and all
Hmm.
that goes into that. So our block of professional or football in general, the topic, can vary from person to person.
Sure.
Um, and we do that with science, we do that with
Right.
religion, we do that with
Sure.
politics
And
and this and
and
that.
and you're gonna narrow down what fits into the funnel based on your interest and your priorities. Because if you have everything up at the top, you have to be selective because you can't consume everything at the top.
Well,
So
that's, yeah,
you have to be selective and get things down to what the what I'm going to read today.
yeah, and but my, and that's absolutely true. My angle was that if two people cross paths on the street,
Hmm.
and this goes to language,
Yeah.
um, it could very well be, unlikely probably, but that you cross paths with another guy on the street, another person on the street, and you get to talking about, you start off with football. It is very unlikely that they're going to say football. Again, an American
Hmm.
guy, football, what the heck is that? That's
Yeah.
pretty unlikely. What's more likely, like on the
Hmm.
lesser informed end of the category of football, is that they'll say, "Oh, I'm not too into football. I know that,
Yeah.
certain things, and you might be proficient at it and stuff." So to get to the thing is that, um, since we have all these variations and stuff, but of knowledge, and then the books out there, we can blockchain, or blockchain. We can sort of umbrella these different things, so we know books exist,
Hmm.
we have our interests, or by circumstance we stumble upon something we might find curious, and
Hmm.
then we go down that rabbit hole.
Right.
But here's the bit to attach to my my judgment over the
Hmm.
book. Um, we also have leaps in assumptions that come attached, so we don't operate with reason all the time,
Yeah.
at all. We have a mixture of assumed leaps to what things mean, and more certain pathways to what things mean, all at the same time.
Right.
So in me bringing the Catcher on the Rye thing, which I never read, um,
And
I attach it to this. this situation that happened, and that's my judgment. But is my judgment the book, or is my judgment the act that occurred and everything to do with it? I'm just not wanting to see it, and that's kind of more like it.
Well, and you also have to add that other layer in there, in that you said you've never read it.
Hmm.
So you don't know what he latched onto in that book.
Hmm.
So, that's another layer that is worth exploration, because
Right.
that we do make judgments about things. We've never heard them, we've never read it, we've never seen that movie. All we know is this I don't like, so I'm not going to bother. When it's possible that it was one unreasonable interpretation or incorrect interpretation. I mean, look at Manson with the White Album. Did that make people turn away from the White Album? Probably not. But I'm sure maybe there was a few people that it turned away from the White Album. But I have always thought that those things, the book, Catcher in the Rye, the Beatles' White Album, I've always looked at those as objects that are innocent. They had nothing to do with the act or acts. So I can't pass judgment on those inanimate objects that had nothing to do with how this twisted individual interpreted it. Because all art is open to interpretation. All art. You and I can look at a painting and have two different meanings, get two different meanings from it. We can watch the same movie and get two different reactions, and pick up completely different storylines, even though we've just watched the same movie. So, how this person interpreted and then acted upon it, I hold the person responsible. I can't hold the inanimate object responsible for that.
Right. And so in this instance, you see that clarity. But do you see that clarity in other instances? I'll speak for you and then see what you say. I'm gonna do a bold. I'll do a bold act, and I'll say you absolutely do this. That I just this sort of like uh mental jujitsu of casting blame or judgment and then blame, while at the same time knowing that you're doing it. A contradiction being held together because I
Mm-hmm.
admitted from the beginning what the actual problem is, and it's not the book. So that means that
Yeah.
that what that means is that I know,
Yeah, you acknowledged it. Yeah.
because in other words I know what's going on, and
Mm-hmm.
yet emotionally I reveal something else.
Right.
So I'm tossing it to you saying it's not true for you in this case,
Mm-hmm.
but I would dare to say that it is absolutely true in endless cases for you in areas that we haven't explored
Oh
today.
yeah, there are certain things that I won't. There are certain groups that I won't buy their music because I don't agree with some things that they have said or what have you. And it's like, well, if that's the way you feel, you're not getting my money, you know. Uh, but and that may be irrational because I've not listened to their music. I might like it, but just knowing that these people are that way, it's just like, no, you're not getting my money. No.
You're making a judgment.
Exactly, 100%. I'm making a judgment about them, not their art. So I'm guilty of that as well.
No, you have to be.
Yeah,
That's why I
Well,
was so
sure,
powerful.
yeah. Well, I acknowledge that. I don't deny it.
Yeah, because what the thing
But
is.
see, I don't think either of us need to justify anything because that comes down to personal taste. You know,
No, I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to
if
justify it.
Well, if you have a well, you don't need to. If you have a visceral reaction to that book based on events that happened, where the person quoted the book and that was his motivation, well, it's nobody's business but yours. You don't have
No,
to
but
justify that.
right, but I'm not um
I know you're not
wor-
trying to
I'm,
justify it.
I'm not even worried about the justify.
Yeah.
What I'm concerned about or interested in is the human mind.
Hmm. Oh
Um,
man, we could go crazy with that.
and well, no, we funneled it into me making a judgment on
Hmm.
this book based on these circumstances, and then you bring in, well, if you had the same, if you found out later that you had this, you drive the same car, would you go and change a thing? And so how would it be that I can find this one thing intolerable, let's say,
Easy,
or reject, and yet something that's equivalent in terms of the connecting linking pattern is not a
easy,
problem whatsoever. Well,
easy.
go ahead. I was going to say, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Because he never talked about what vehicle he drove. He never talked about what shoes he wore. He never talked about what his favorite food was. He did talk about Catcher of the Rye, and that stuck with you. So
That goes to
all
show,
that other stuff was he never used that as a justification for his act. So it's irrelevant.
right?
You
It's
know
not in my view.
exactly.
It's not in the movie.
Hmm.
It's not in the narration
Hmm.
of this event,
Right. It's just irrelevant.
right? Um,
So that's why you don't have that same reaction.
right. And so
Perfectly reasonable.
that is reasonable because if you don't see it, you
Well,
can't.
no, it's not that you don't see it. It's that he didn't use that as a justification. If he had used the fact that he drove a red pickup as part of his justification, you'd be turned off by red pickups too. I'm willing to bet.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. We're saying the
Hmm.
same thing. I'm saying that the film that was put in front of me
Hmm.
didn't include that variation.
Right.
So I'm saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, but that is an interesting thing because in any other circumstance, just what's this guy's name from the Rolling Stones?
Mick Jagger.
Mick. You already
Oh, I
kink
knew where
kink
it was going
kink kink kink. This
because
chord is now.
I've got a couple more coming.
Um. So so um that film
Hmm.
is played in front of me up until the time, and it was kind of concurrent, to be honest with you. That's what
Yeah.
ruined it. But
Hmm.
up until the time that it was just on the radio for me
Yeah.
and didn't see those
Right.
80s images
Yeah.
on MTV,
Yeah.
just before that I was like, man, freaking okay. I mean, I wasn't totally into it, but
Yeah. You
I
and
mean,
me both. Yeah.
but still on the
Hmm.
radio you can't deny that. But once I saw
Yep.
those, and here we're not talking about leaps and assumptions, here we're talking about literal leaps, those leaps, dashes, and just grand.
What's with the shoulder thing? What's with
Yeah,
that?
yeah, it's a shoulder motorboat. The shoulder motorboat.
And
um
well, that's just cringy. It's just cringy to me, and I don't like cringe. I don't like it.
so here's another.
And that might be an irrational thing for me. It's just when I see something that's cringy, I just want to look away and I don't even want to acknowledge that it happened.
Okay, but let
You
me
know?
play off of that. Let me play off of that. And by the way, I agree. And there's no need to, like, for instance, whatever. I gotta say what I wanted to say, but I gotta say
Go
this
ahead.
in between. So I agree because when it hits you, you know it's cringe, and you get a internal rejection feeling out of it.
Uh huh.
I mean, you just do. Now,
Yeah.
a person standing right next to you
Hmm.
might be like,
May enjoy the hell out of it. Yeah.
Man, those shoulders, they glisten with that's
Look at
just
the energy.
yeah, yeah, whatever the heck's going on in their
Hmm.
brain in their movie
And I'm like,
role.
really? Really?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Exactly. It's like I don't. But their interpretation, as hard as as difficult as
Yeah.
it is for me to accept,
Hmm.
I mean, it is.
Hmm.
They may be watching in their movie
Hmm.
a bad to the bone shoulder motorboat
Performance. Yeah.
freaking activity, and it's just as valid.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's not.
absolutely.
It's not to me, but
But now
um,
we're talking about personal taste. So,
and this is all part of it. But
yeah.
here's what I'll go for. In the '80s,
Hmm.
I would see coming into my grandma's house these Spanish novellas,
Hmm.
like soap opera type things,
Yeah.
and they did everything. It you can say it for American novellas too, because if you think of the exaggerated like
Yeah.
plots and reactions, but in the Spanish novellas, um, which I don't want to say shocked me, but it was I was like, oh, because remember, you're
Hmm.
growing up here, you're getting to cultural references and this and that, but you're into your Americano life. You're
Yeah.
not looking at these things as cool things necessarily, or not
Yeah.
even necessarily at all.
Yeah.
In the novellas, apart from the dramatic, over the top stuff,
Yeah.
their decor, Mark, was was gilded, crafted, intricate. It's as if you were being propelled into some sort of like 18th century freaking villa.
That was a style. It was a thing for. I mean, and I'm as white bread as you can get. Out here on the West Coast, they called it Spanish colonial, man, and it was a thing.
Hey, wait. I'm also as white bread as you can get. Just so you know, and I can I can I can prove it. But go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, as white bread as you are, if you're white bread, I'm clear. All right. So, what I'm getting at is, I am so far removed from anything Mediterranean in my upbringing. I didn't even know what that was, but I knew Spanish colonial style when I saw it because it's exactly what you're describing right now. Real dark, dark woods, and every piece of hardware was just shiny bright, and it had this look like medieval, you know.
Yeah,
And it was a thing out here
gold
too, dude.
leaf, gold leafed,
Yes.
and just completely. But you know what it also is? Look at France. Look at Austria. Look at the decor. The
Hmm.
further west into Europe you go and south,
Well,
the opulence
hmm,
that entails that comes from that.
yeah.
That and
Well,
you know
if
where it
you
comes
look
from?
at,
You know
if
where
you
it
look,
comes from?
go ahead.
It comes from the German Empire. Not
Um,
fully, but yes, the opulence comes from the German
yeah,
Empire.
the Holy Roman Empire
Right.
did a lot to foster that.
Yes.
And make no mistake, the Holy Roman Empire was basically Germany, a little bit of France too. But the French, they had periods in there because, like Louis XIV style, was white accented with gold. So all the furniture was painted white, and it was accented with gold paint and then gold leaf on the hardware and this, that, and the other. But then you go into the 13th, it was more, and they a bunch of scallops and everything else. But Louis the 13th, it was straight lines and squares and natural woods. So the opulence kind of, it shifted and went into patterns, but that's neither here nor there. My limited experience with Spanish novellas happened down in California, and it was going over to a friend's house who happened to be Mexican. Their mothers all watched them, and my grandmother was a major fan of soap operas. So watching the American soap operas And not understanding a word of the Spanish novellas that Mama was watching, I couldn't tell you her name to say because that's all I ever called her was Mama. I can say that it seemed to me that the Spanish novellas were overacted. They were over the top, overly dramatic. But it was basically the same story as in the American soap operas.
Yeah, it's soap operas and the opulences. Well, anyways, to
Hmm.
get to the meat of it,
Sorry
I
about that.
had the same reaction
Hmm.
viewing the imagery,
Hmm.
and yet those weren't considered, or I don't know. I never asked them, but my grandparents didn't even consider or question or bother with that question, but I did, because perspective, and this links with what we know, according to what we know in that inverted pyramid and the categories that we fit into
Yeah.
it, what's left out, and preferences and bias fits into it. And this is where I was going to go, from the beginning. There's also attached a necessary, it's necessary because it's human, bias to choose at every turn,
Sure.
at every decision. Today I had to go to the market and actually walk. That's kind of part of why I was late, coming back.
Hmm.
I went to the market, and I went to the Sedano's
Hmm.
supermarket, which is, so I walked
Hmm.
because I wanted to experience the journey and stuff and change it up a little bit. Um, and once I got through the doors of that supermarket, immediately I began to and all throughout, but just starting from there, I made little micro choices, and those are preferences. Do I turn down this aisle? Do I
Hmm.
turn down?
Sure.
Do I want this butter or the other type of butter? Wait a second, this is
Parquet.
margarine,
Hmm.
and so all these things are choices, and when we're doing it, when I was looking at the margarine, and this ties to the Catcher on the Rye in the undergirding premise that I'm trying to get at. I'm conscious of why I don't like, or why I reject, or I feel pushing away this whole notion. It's based on what happened to John Lennon, and I'm aware that
Hmm.
that choice was a moral rejection. That's not based on, um, consider a critical thought over what's really. But I'm aware that I'm aware of what I was do of why I reject it. You see, but in this case with the butter, um, I'm on autopilot without considering. Well, the reason I want this type of butter, that type of butter, I was looking at prices, and then I was worried about, I don't want margarine, but I was an autopilot. So what I'm
Yeah.
getting at is this: that our judgments are quick, and many times, a lot of the times, based on micro preferences, um, and just extrapolate that. That's part of being human being. The critical thinking, or what you were saying, just to wrap it up, what you were saying with, well, I have gaps because there's so many books, but we can't read all the books. Just the same, we can't think
Hmm.
of all the choices because we have an automatic kick on
Well,
that.
we haven't experienced all the options. We don't know what options are out there until we go experience it. If you've never been into a French restaurant, you have absolutely no idea what could be on the menu.
Yeah.
You'll only find out if you walk in the door, you know? So, now you may think I'm not much for French cooking, but until you experience it, how do you know? And, so that equals into the equation as well. You're talking about going to the store and choosing butter. You knew you didn't want margarine. Okay, that's a personal preference. You're on autopilot. You are looking for prices. But you know what? Sometimes you just don't have to have a reason. Sometimes you just don't have a reason. I like the taste of butter and I'm not much for the taste of margarine. That's good enough. But you have experienced both. So you know.
Let me bring something up. Um, out of, you said that you are, what's the word you worded, did you say, what
I
was the
don't
word
know.
you said? No, I'm thinking while I'm I'm thinking while I'm holding that the did you say something? Well, I saw the novellas when visiting my friend's
Yeah,
house, and
yeah.
from my perspective, I'm playing. What did you say? What was
I
the?
said that they appeared to be overacting.
No,
It
but
was
you
a
said,
little over the top.
and you said I'm something or other, and then I said, well,
I
I
said
am.
I'm as white bread as you can get. Yeah.
Okay, and then I said, well, wait a second, I'm white bread too, and you said, then I'm transparent.
Yeah,
Okay,
because what I meant by that was you have had immersion in another culture, and at that point in my life, I had no immersion in any culture but mine. With the Texas mother and Texas grandmother.
yeah, the white bread
Hmm.
means plain Jane.
Hmm.
Is that what it means?
Plain Jane, and just basically immersed in kind of boring, actually. Just straight down the middle, so average, just able to be bypassed. And, that one invisible guy that's always in the corner of the room.
And you see yourself as that,
I did when I was a kid, yeah.
and you see, and you
Maybe
see,
that's why I'm so loud now.
and you and then you see me, which is fine. The louder, the better, because it brings in dynamics and curiosity, at least from my perspective. But and you see, and when I said, well, I'm white bread, then you said, um, then I'm transparent. You're saying that, well, are you
Because
saying that,
there's
well, if
nothing, well, because there's nothing plain about you.
so
You
let
were a musician. You started studying music at a young age, but you didn't just grab the Mel Bay chords book and start playing. You did a deep dive. You
so
weren't you weren't you weren't learning. You were in full scale research mode, Holmes.
so let me touch on this,
Hmm.
and this is a good little thing,
Okay.
or at least in at least in my mind, it's good. But I'll throw it out and see what you say. So it's interesting to me, although I'm aware,
Hmm.
and we're to a point, all human beings are aware that, and we've touched on this before. From my perspective, even though I can self-reflect and say, well, it's true. Um, when I was a kid, and we've shared those stories.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I picked up a Mel Bay book. I just grabbed the guitar. The different variations of story. You know my background. I have this whole
Uh-huh.
Caribbean thing going. Like this sketch up
Hmm.
of my world. And from your perspective, as you've just described,
Hmm.
there's nothing plain about that.
Right. And here's what I mean by that. I was always that guy in the corner of the room, the invisible one, and you were the dude on stage.
Oh, but well, we gotta work on, or at least explore that if you want to.
Hmm.
But here's the thing that came. So um, the thing is that as much as one can self reflect, or you can self reflect of yourself and me,
Sure.
and this concept of playing, in
Hmm.
terms of, like, just regular old this, that, and the other.
Hmm. Ordinary.
It's not like you were in a pirate
Ordinary
ship.
average guy.
Yeah, it's not like you were in a pirate ship, sequestered for 5 years and learned to
No.
survive off of coconut. Like all these things, I get that. And so in the contrast, but from my perspective, what you see as, well, damn, there's some. I mean, that's what you're suggesting.
Yeah,
That,
there's
man,
some substance there. Yeah.
there's some dynamics going on. But from my perspective, it's hard for me to say, oh yeah, there's dynamics going on in this. I mean, I know there are, but I don't have your view of me, is what I'm getting at.
Okay, well, yeah.
From the outside view,
Mm-hmm.
looking in towards me and what that, whatever I've offered and
Mm-hmm.
saying this happened to me or this happened to my parents and this and that, I'm recounting
Mm-hmm.
my, just like when you have recounted your history with your ancestors traveling through this unfolding of America,
Mm-hmm.
um, expansion out west, resettling,
Mm-hmm.
and all these things. You're you're giving me that, but how? But I'm receiving it and making the connections in my mind
Mm-hmm.
uh, the way I make them.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, I have a picture of your history
Yeah.
that's not. I mean, it's close, more or less, according to what you said, but it's not as if you were to necessarily picture it in your mind.
Yeah.
And so what I'm bringing up is this: that your perspective coming in to me and you explaining that, and me explaining yours now in brief snippets. This is what happens across populations and
Mm-hmm.
human beings, um, to the very and the gaps that exist in that. And I just find that. What do you think of that? I find that interesting. We perceive, like Abraham Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
I have a story in my mind that
Yeah.
you may overlap with about Abraham Lincoln based on the pictures that we have of him,
Yeah.
some of the stories we both share that we know,
Mm-hmm.
the consequences of what happened.
Yeah.
But the way we constructed that story and other attaching facts that go with that, and the tones and this and that, might differ. Where if you wrote a movie and had the actors play it out and I did, they
Yeah.
would be two different movies with
Yep.
overlapping themes.
Yeah.
What do you think of just that?
Oh,
Just
well, that's just, yeah, that's just the difference between human beings. And again, we go back to what I said earlier about two different interpretations of the art, and so you're gonna have two different creations of the same art. Look at how many times Batman has been done and Superman has been done. They're all different interpretations of the same comic book characters, but each and every one of them is completely different, just in tone, in the character development, in the backstories. I mean, the backstories may be similar in that they kind of have to follow the comic book theme, but each director is allowed to just run wild with it. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
um,
That's a good example, actually. No, well, actually,
so
that's a perfect example.
so you don't see yourself the same way I see you because you can't look through my eyes.
Exactly.
So I see a more dynamic individual who, well, Jim Dockrell kind of, he got one part of it here. It would seem that when Eloy gets an interest, he goes all the way down the rabbit hole. It's not just an interest, it's an obsession. And that's just a tiny, tiny part of it. But that's what I mean when I said you got into music. You didn't just learn to play the music, you learned who played the music. You learned their background. You learned their influences. You read their biographies. And you really dug deep. There's nothing plain Jane about that to me.
Yeah,
And
it's
and
difficult for
again,
me.
and again, when I picture the ballroom, I'm the guy back in the corner leaning against the wall, tapping my foot with the music, and you're the dude up on stage. That's how I see it.
So now let me say something else.
Right.
I'll say it's heavy for me, but it's really not heavy at all. But for me, because of the consequences of of all that's included potentially, and that could be said potentially. If you remember, originally it was Jamie Page and I for the Mad Maker show,
Yeah.
but you stepped in and became a a frequent co-host. There was choice, trusted people
Hmm.
that, in my mind, and for proximity and interest,
Hmm.
because if you weren't interested, you wouldn't have.
Right. Well, I liked what you were doing with the Mad Maker show.
You joined and you became part of the
Yeah.
roster of the hosting.
Yeah. When Jamie couldn't do it, I would step in. Yeah.
And Doc did too in a couple of instances.
Hmm.
I remember.
Yeah.
Um, when we did that, I'm going somewhere with this actually, but I just
Okay.
I if you think about it, we were doing a woodworking maker show,
Hmm.
but it was an interview show, which is not something out of the. But my intentions that I always was to explore the lives of these people. Do you remember how it was more focused on tell me about your history and this and that?
Yeah.
I didn't know why I was doing it. I've always done that.
Hmm.
I want to know and this and that. And here's what I'm getting at. Everybody has a dynamic human experience
Hmm.
and history full of lessons,
Yeah.
tragedies, overcoming, like all
Sure.
these things in every life.
Excuse me.
So what I'm getting at is that so this thing that you said to me from your point of view, which I have no access to, because I don't have your eyes or
Hmm.
Jim's eyes or to view outwards. From my vantage point looking outward, I see
Hmm.
people as potentials.
Oh, sure.
I mean, unless somebody's like being a jerkwad and like they cut in front of me in line or they elbow me,
Hmm.
and then at that moment I'm like, I still recognize that they're human beings with potentials, but I don't want to bother with them because they're just being a jerk. Get out of my way, you cut me off in the lane or whatever. But
Yeah.
I'm saying just like all things being equal, I see potential stories
Hmm.
there, um, and so this idea of well I'm playing in this and that, or just more
Well.
basic, or just in a safe spot.
Hmm.
I don't like. I understand what you're saying. I'm not taking
Hmm.
that, but I'm at the
Well,
same time I'm saying, well, that's not necessarily true.
no, there was potential there. A lot of it had to do with circumstance. I did spend a lot of time in my junior high and high school years when I could because the classes were offered. I was in speech and drama. I'm very comfortable on a stage.
You're good.
And I'm very comfortable speaking in front of large groups of people. I had no problem improvising a speech. Somebody give me a topic, and I'd sit and we had to do 10 minutes on that topic, whether we knew about it or not. I'm very comfortable doing that. I have no problem doing it. But circumstance didn't let me really carry. I mean, it's hard to make a career out of that because no matter what you think in high school, how many millions of high schools are there in the country, and how many certain select people ever move beyond that? So that circumstance didn't come to fruition. I wanted to be a filmmaker. That didn't come to fruition. So I kind of plodded along doing whatever jobs I could here until I joined the military and then just kind of plodded along through life. That's what I mean, an ordinary average guy. I have had the opportunity to travel a lot. So I've been very fortunate there. I've been blessed to meet and marry the woman of my dreams. So I have had a lot of success in my eyes, but I still was never that dynamic in my own opinion
For
of
yourself.
myself. Yes, in my opinion. And it's kind of the same thing. You don't see yourself. as dynamic as I see you, and I don't see myself as dynamic as possibly you see me. So I think there may be a little bit of self-deprecation on both of our parts. So
It's not necessarily self-deprecation per se. Although we have that
mhm,
those tendencies just because humans have them and some
to
more than
play it
others,
down, yeah.
but it's more of this difficulty
Hmm.
that the way I see Steve,
Hmm.
um, is probably more dynamic than he thinks that I see him as.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the guy's freaking amazing.
well, he's done a lot of good and a lot of effort. I know in the background we've talked a lot, and he's
and
mentioned
and and
things that he has as a human being,
and
some
still does.
shortcoming. Well, let me just say some
Okay.
shortcomings in past history. Like he has
Well,
he has shit. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. This
yeah,
is
yeah, we all have shortcomings, sure. Yeah.
I am elevating the concept of Steve
Hmm.
from my point of view. We are human beings.
Hmm.
I'm picking him out. I drew out and I named him. I put him on a chair. Okay,
Well,
everybody's lights, cameras, action.
but
Um,
because we know him and we know what he does and we know what he has done.
I'm bringing
And
him as an example,
exactly.
and also bring him into the conversation too, just so they because he'll probably get some kick out of it or chills. I doubt. I think that
Oh, just
I think that by naming him, from my understanding, that he'll say, oh, he's being considerate, but he's trying to say some truths as he sees it in the
mhm.
panorama. And this is that. But it's not like he's a human being. There's a totality of an experience within the life, and we could say the same with Jamie Page, Jimmy DeResta,
Mhm.
just unit
All
Jim
these guys.
Dockrell, Linda. Just go on and on and on. We are human beings. We are experiences. We are conscious and stuff. So what I'm getting at is that from his perspective, thinking, oh well, what would Eloy necessarily well the act of sharing your even casually,
Hmm.
um the things that of humans, those those things, those exchanges bring um consideration,
Hmm.
warmth, sometimes um contradictions, or well, I don't like that saying,
Well, but
or I don't like that attitude, or this or that. But the totality of
mhm.
the tension
uh,
that is included in human beings, this irrational side, this logical side, that's what
well,
makes human beings, and we have constant complexity,
yeah.
and we can't escape it.
No, sometimes it's nice just to be acknowledged. Sometimes it's nice just to be seen. Because, and I can speak from experience on that, being that guy who would rather sit in the corner and play with the dog at the party, we all kind of want our moment in the sun, and that's why I'm so comfortable on stage, because I get my chance. Because when I'm part of the crowd, I'm just part of the crowd. So if I want to stand out from the crowd, I have to put myself out there, which is why I do 3 live streams a week and have my YouTube channel. It's it's fun to me. It's fun to do these things. But when I take the headphones off, I talk to my wife. I'm very comfortable talking to her. But when I get in a room full of people, I'm the guy in the corner just kind of looking around, seeing what's going on.
Yeah,
You
but
know what
we
I
all
mean?
are.
So,
We all are.
well, I'm not the guy.
John Lennon was a guy that, once he got off stage, this that, and the other, from his perspective, he was viewing the hallway he was walking to towards the bathroom
Sure.
to go use the bathroom, and his tummy got hungry, and he went over
Well,
to the
sure.
dining
But I
table
mean,
room.
but in the party of life, I'm not the guy hanging out by the fridge talking to everybody who comes over to get a Coke. You know, I'm the dude over in the corner playing with the dog.
I'm saying that tension,
Hmm.
boring moments, exciting moments,
Hmm.
leaps in assumptions, um,
Well, it's all part of the human
factual
experience. Yeah.
factual conclusions, and all those differences are all at the same time existing in the operating system and camera that is a human being.
Sure.
Um, and if you think about that other people too, that's true too.
Hmm.
Except, like you said before, depending on interest, some people go in one direction over one
Sure.
thing or the other. Um, it does bring a little bit of, or not a little bit. It makes me think of humanity. I can, I can see my, at least I can see the potentials of errors and some that I'm quite clear of, like that pop into my head and I cringe over my actions in the past and such.
Oh, same
Um,
here.
um, but at the same time, it makes me, without knowing all the other moments of error or misbehavior from my for my taste, that I may not see. I know that I have error, and then I see other people, and I think to myself, you know what? These are human beings with errors just like me, and like you
Sure.
said before in the past, in some conversations, sometimes two people cross paths. Maybe they're grumpy because we have talked about that in the past,
Yeah.
and they're like snippy. It maybe at a checkout counter.
Hmm.
We I usually bring us to that situation because for some reason,
Yeah.
but
Well, it's a
they
common
might
experience.
it's a common experience. They might be snippy, and you catch wind of that, and you're
Hmm.
like, "Well, wait a second, I'm a patron here," and that's it. But they might be dealing with some sort of crazy thing in
Yeah.
their life,
Exactly.
right? So it makes me think of all these things. But putting all that just to the side for a second, um, there's also there's also certain lines, at least that I draw. I think we all do, but there's lines that
Hmm.
I draw. All that's available of all that humans, the contradictions and
Hmm.
catcher on the rye and your preference at one moment or the next, butter, whatever the case might be,
Parquet.
or parquet. um, there's a certain line of of unacceptableness
Yeah.
in the spectrum of human things. So on one extreme would be probably like a psychopath killer, and
Sure.
on the other extreme would be somebody that just gets hit with rocks and bricks and they just take it because they're so passive. Like, no, I can't do nothing to no one because that's wrong and we're all human, and you just get nailed constantly and
Yeah.
freaking tossed over the edge of a, you know, those are two extremes,
Sure.
and most people don't live in those extremes. They live in the fluctuating
Yeah. Of the
of the
center.
dynamics.
Yeah.
But there are people like that.
Sure.
There are people on those extremes where
Sure.
they're quite
And
willing to,
thank God they're the overwhelming minority of the population. You know.
yeah, um but there's a problem with that too, because we have billions of people on earth, and if you count
Yeah.
what the percentage, there's a truckload
Oh
act.
yeah, but you can't save everybody. All you can do is hope you don't live next door to them when they go off. I mean, you know.
Yeah, and so whatever, so all that drawn from the catcher on the rye and
Hmm.
my judgment. There's judgments happening at every step of our lives.
Well,
um
yeah, judgment is what keeps you from picking up the guy carrying a chainsaw wearing a hockey mask.
or picking up the guy that looks like a decent human being but chainsaws people for a
Yeah,
living.
exactly. You know.
See, that's the thing. That's where logic, reason, comes into play. That's why that's needed, because
Yeah,
you may pick up, not you, but like let's say in some sort of horror movie or something, or even in real life. Actually, that
yeah.
they showed pictures in one segment. They had like this little experiment. I think I've told you about it, where
Hmm.
they showed people pictures side by side, a scrungy, very
Hmm.
scrungy looking men
Who's
next
the
to,
bad guy? Yeah.
and then they say who's the bad guy, and like 9 out of 10 times
Hmm.
they'd pick the decent looking fellow. and they happen to be known psychopaths,
Yeah, serial killers. Yeah,
serial killers. Yeah,
yeah.
'cause,
Well, Jeffrey Dahmer was very charming when he wasn't eating people. I mean, I hear he was a jewel, but
dude, dude, that's insanity, dude. I
yeah,
mean, that's insanity.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, Ted Ted Bundy picked up so many women because he was a good-looking guy and he looked safe.
yeah, well, because the assumptions, the leaps and assumptions, the this, that, and the
Hmm.
other, um, the shallow externalities that we,
Hmm.
which why wouldn't one think if something, if a dish is
Hmm.
pleasant looking to consume at a restaurant,
Yeah,
why would you think that there's a cyanide capsule hiding
yeah.
below the
You would never think there'd be nightshade in your salad.
what's nightshade? Oh,
It's a
the
poisonous plant.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. You know what's also amazing is that it's a miracle we've made it this far because all I don't want to include you in this, but you I don't know you'll tell me, but I've made a lot of dumb decisions that could have led to some screwed up
dude,
result.
dude, there's a reason why my body hurts as much as it does, and it's because of some stupid decisions I made when I was younger. Jumping motorcycles and cars. I mean, I've been thrown out of vehicles, rolled a car, the car rolled 4 times. I flew out of it on the second roll, landed face down in the dirt. I mean, I have tore this body up, and I started as a little kid on roller skates, then graduated to bicycles, graduated to motorcycles, and then said, let's do it in a car. So I have beat this body up, and I'm paying for it. So,
That's being flung from a car. Damn.
yeah, well, it wasn't by choice, but, you know, Scheiße passiert, as the Germans say.
Let me ask you this question:
Okay.
when you growing up, did your parents, your mom, dad, like whatever's memorable, did they, or better said, what are some, if at all, you probably had some, um, cautionary um, whatnots did your parents tell you, likened to putting your finger in a socket, or something like that, but that are unique
Oh,
that you think are
well, not so much unique, but every day on the motorcycle, my mother was just convinced I was going to kill myself on it. She just knew, you know. Um, Stay away from that river. You're going to drown. I mean, that I remember when I was like 2 years old. And they were probably right. Stay away from the river, stay away from the river. Because it was right in our backyard, literally in our backyard. Um, oh my gosh. Um, I can't remember anything other than that, other than my mother thinking, you are absolutely crazy for getting a motorcycle. You are absolutely nuts.
let me throw some out and you tell me it might spring some memories and some might sound weird to you.
Hmm.
I was told don't get into the pool after you eat.
Oh,
You have
yeah,
to
I
wait
was
at
told
least
that.
30 minutes or something.
I was told an hour. Yeah, otherwise you'll get a cramp and drown. It's like, has that ever really happened in real life? But it's one of those things that it's universal. Don't sit so close to the TV; it's bad for your eyes.
They weren't
And,
wrong.
and what do we do now? We got a 32-inch, monitor right in front of us. I've got a 24-inch, but I'm touching my monitor right now. So I'm sitting right on top of the tube, and my eyes are fine. Yeah, sure, he needs glasses. um, what was a bunch of the other ones? Man, there were so many. I don't remember most of them.
Mine was, instead of the don't get too close to the lake, you said,
River.
to the river. Well, mine was don't go to the canal. Don't get too close to the edge of the canal.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a little bit different, but it's not in
Hmm.
terms of the. But yeah, there was that. And by the way, even though I explored, I kept those thoughts, or those cautionary tales
Hmm.
in my mind. They still, like she would say, if you're gonna go, stop at the corner, and my dad would say it too. If you're gonna go to your friend's house, and look both ways, look
Yes.
both ways, and then cross. Make
Hmm.
sure there's no cars. You look both, like they would drill it into
Yeah.
me. So I, at the beginning, and I still do it. I would
Yeah.
stand on the corner and I'd look both ways, but
Hmm.
then I'd think twice a little bit and look, and then I'd want, like because that's the programming, you know.
You just brought something to mind. It was kind of strange when I first saw it in Germany, but the more I saw it all the time, it became nothing new. The German little kids, when they had to cross the street, they would get up to wherever they were going to cross the street. They would look both ways. Then they would do that and point out. Point, I want to cross here.
So they'd signal.
Yeah. And cars would slow down and stop. But it was weird. You see the kid approaching the corner, looking both ways like that, and then just arms straight out. You know, it's like, wow, that was pretty weird. You know, but it wasn't enough to just passively stand there and wait for traffic. It was like taking direct action. I want to cross here now.
I do that sometimes, not lately because my window doesn't roll down.
Hmm.
So maybe not for the last 6 to 7 years, but but I'd even, apart from turning signal, I'd even
Hmm.
stick my hand out just to
Yeah,
double frickin' check
yeah.
that they know what's going on.
Jim Dockrell's got a bunch of them over here. Don't take wooden nickels. Yeah, okay. Um, mind your p's and q's. Yeah, that one took me a while to figure out, and I was probably in junior high before I go. Oh, okay, I see p's and q's. Yeah, easy to confuse them. Keep it up, and I'll give you something to really cry about. Yeah, those are my one of my dad's favorite sayings. Keep it up, and I'll give you something to cry about.
You want to know what my dad used to do?
Hmm.
You want to see us? This might signal something. When I was petulant,
Mm-hmm.
maybe similar to what you guys are thinking,
Yeah.
because you want whatever you want or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
case as a kid. On occasion,
Mm-hmm.
maybe more than I'd like to admit, I can't say at this point because for some reason those memories are few and far between.
Yeah.
They're still there though.
Uh huh.
I'd get on the ground and no, well, that's wrong. That's scratch that. I'd be complaining about something that I wanted, maybe go somewhere, it wasn't time yet,
Mm-hmm.
something to that effect. And when I got rambunctious, my dad said, "You can sit there. You can get on the ground and kick and scream all you want. But the result, I'm paraphrasing, the result will be the same. You have to wait." And that really screws up a kid's thing, because you're like, so he's saying that there's no chance it's going to be when he says,
Yeah.
not when I want. So you're like, well, heck.
Yeah. They're in control, not me.
Yeah, so I'm like, well, so then I guess I have to stop then.
Well, my parents had different. They had different solutions for different problems. Like if I threw a fit in the store, real easy. My mom or my dad, one or the other, picked me up, swap me on the behind, and then take me out. And we sat in the car while the other adult finish up the shopping. That was their signal to me. Number one, you're not going to participate in whatever it is we're doing. Number two, you're going to sit in the car and be bored. And number three, you're not getting nothing. So that was three negative results right there on that one fit.
Boom, boom,
And
boom.
you learned real quick not to throw that fit. You know? And then having a little brother, I got to, oh, wait till he finds out. Yeah, he's going to go out and sit in the car for a while. Yeah, I can see that coming. And then sure enough, Dad pick him up and right out in the car. And I'm walking along next to Mom's cart with a big grin on my face because my brother got in trouble and I didn't, you know.
That's a different dynamic.
Oh, it's a totally different dynamic.
I mean, compared to being an only child.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Let me say this. Do you remember? I'll give you my example, but here's the thing: the first time or the earliest memory of when you put your foot on the ground and you stood up to dad or mom or those. Here's my earliest that I can recall. Something or other. I used a word innocently, maybe. I can't say at this point. We
Hmm.
were in the living room of our house here in Sweetwater. And my dad says, if you use bad words, you're going to get a spanking. And I was little, like I was little.
Hmm.
And I stood there, I looked at him, and I said, pee pee poo poo caca. And he looked at me and he said, what? Come over here. And I started running
Hmm.
up on the couch, down for like jumping on the couch was also a rebellious thing because it showed me that I'm saying no, and I'm
Hmm.
gonna get up on the couch. And I ran up on the couch in circles, and him chasing me, and me yelling out poo poo caca pee pee, and I was running saying that,
Hmm.
and he stopped and he looked and he said to my mom, look what your son is saying," and he just walked away. Um, from his perspective,
Hmm.
he might have enjoyed the living daylights out of that because he saw me standing up. At the same time, he would have said he's challenging me, but he would have said, "Look at my boy. He's showing." You know what I'm saying? Um,
I do know what you're saying, but you were also being ridiculous. You know that now.
oh yeah, of
But
course.
as it, but see, this comes from because I've got kids. You don't have kids. There are 1,000 times a week when you, as a parent, want to just bust up laughing, but you can't. You have to be the stern. You have to be the parent.
Right.
You know, you can't crack up laughing, even no matter how hard you want to.
Yeah, because it's a lesson situation.
Exactly. You have to let them know, no, you can't do that. And, but oh God, you want to laugh. You really do.
Yeah, because look at this little for
Especially when they come up with a good zinger. You just want to, you
yeah
can't say that.
look at this 2.5 to 3 foot child staking his claim on something
Yeah.
he has no business staking claims over. It's just hilarious. But at the same time, it's showing look at the character formation that's occurring in front of my eyes.
I didn't rebel against my parents verbally until I was in my late teens. Um, I rebelled against my parents in subtle ways, in doing things I knew they didn't want me doing. Well, getting the motorcycle was my first act of rebellion because my mother was dead set against it. But my father was at that time riding a motorcycle to work because it was cheaper than driving a car. And he just enjoyed riding. So, with dad having a motorcycle and riding it to work every day, it was real hard for him to say no, I couldn't get one when I was 16 years old. I had my driver's license and everything. So it was kind of, yeah, I can't. And it wasn't a case of me getting a little dirt bike or riding a scooter or something like that. It was a case of this is a street bike riding on the street. Mom was totally dead set against it, but dad basically talked her into it. And
You
it was
override him.
Yeah. Well, he didn't override. He just basically talked her into it. That was one thing I got to say about my parents. If one parent uh, made a rule or a declaration, the other parent backed them up. They never fought about things. They would have discussions about it later on, but that rule stood right then. They would discuss it later on, then they'd come get us and say, okay, or come get me and say, okay, we've talked it over and we think that this, or that or the other or what have you. And that was the case with the motorcycle because my mom said, no, you're not getting no, you're not getting a motorcycle. And I had saved up the money to buy it, so it wasn't like they were out anything. So,
Yeah.
but I really didn't rebel verbally. Um, my big rebellion came along in the 8th grade when I would skip school a lot, really a lot. And I never finished my 8th grade. And they passed me up to high school just so I'd be somebody else's problem. And I had almost perfect attendance in high school. It's just I did not like that school in junior high. I didn't like the teachers, and I said, "Screw it, I'm not going."
I saw the patterns early on, Mark. Um, Let me share this to do with that stuff
Hmm.
uh, from before. In terms of we can't see our reflection. I mean, we can see aspects of it, but we don't know
Yeah,
what other people and all that kind of stuff.
yeah. I can't see other people's perspective, how they perceive us. Yeah.
But that all changed when I started using AI
Mm-hmm.
to interrogate it.
Mm-hmm.
I use it slightly different than maybe, and I've even asked it that. Do I use you in a way that's commonly used? And it'll say things like, no, there is some percentage that would, but typically they ask questions that resolve, be it, facts or things of that nature.
Sources, things like that. Yeah.
Some people will ask for help with book reports and just they list off certain things and stuff. But the way you use it, and the way I use it, is basically to thoroughly interrogate it um, with knowledge bank that it has, um, and to interrogate me to interrogate it, to interrogate my views.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's some insightful territory, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
If you want full, full, full on um, clarity, as much as possible.
Sure.
There's never the point of just that's it, as far as I can tell. There are moments of clarity that illuminate deeper
Sure.
than one would previously. And one of those areas is exactly that, this idea of the mirror. We can self reflect, and that's true to a varying degree from person to person. Some people cannot self reflect, by the way.
No.
There are a lot of, according to research, there's a fair amount of a sliding scale of how many people can actually self. So if you are a person that can't self reflect, this leads to a lot of issues. They may not lead to issues that you recognize as the person that can't self reflect, but there are issues implicit in that. And a few of those is your distance from cause and effect,
Mm-hmm.
remorse, sympathy, and it it's more selective and more shrunk down. Um,
And good
but
old fashioned narcissism.
and,
That
and,
count
and not
that figures
not not
into it as well.
and that's an area, but
Mm-hmm.
just broadly speaking,
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to this. You when you hit yourself on the toe on a dresser, you feel the pain exactly at the moment that you got your foot stuck up on that corner and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
it's an instantaneous point of reference for you, and you feel at the very least the pain,
Hmm.
um, and empathy for your foot, which is attached to you. Similarly to your loved one's family, and it branches out. Maybe a neighbor, you hear something. Maybe someone within your tribe, be it ethnically or whatnot. Maybe even countrywide. But the broader out, some people just the linking factors of empathy might drop off. So that's self reflection, and recognition that, wait a second, other people are human too, and they have nothing to do
Yeah,
with the background that I come from or this or that. So there's all
sure.
these things. Anyways, so but with AI and being able to interrogate it to the cows, um, it reflects back to you different areas where you have shortcomings. um, Potential. Everything's always sitting in potential.
Sure.
Honestly, it's not like
But
clink 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 with the gavel, but it's giving you
but
feedback.
but you have to be self-aware to recognize that.
Well, if you don't use AI to begin with for the purpose of self interrogation,
Hmm.
that's a signal that
Yeah.
already. Um,
Hmm.
it doesn't mean that the person is not empathetic. This I'm not trying to say that. What I'm saying is that the moment you engage in any engagement and the way you engage are all telltale signs of other things. There is nothing in isolation. Um, Behaviors people express,
Hmm.
what they show, say more, whether they say something or don't, or what they leave out or what they include. So there is no such thing as a comment on Facebook that's 5 word sentence. That's just a 5 word sentence. There is not. Um, there's more because it comes attached to a brain. You see, it comes to attach to a brain that has a mood, that has hunger pangs, maybe in the early afternoon,
Sure.
that's tired after this, that has watched
Sure.
certain videos or had a confrontation with someone over at the corner store. It comes attached with the rest of the world. um, and so why I'm using that as an example is that, on the other hand, when you use AI to interrogate ideas and yourself and what this means, what that means, it opens up this whole thing that I didn't have access to before. Um, and I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about myself in areas that why I am the way I am, and question what I question, and this, that, and the other. So it's helped in that way. It's opened up some doors that I left as questionable, or with a question mark, let's say, of, oh, that's something. Because in life, you operate with, not all the time, but we don't have someone sitting there telling us without emotion, not being um, concerned about whether you're going to get offended, or they're going to get offended. That
Hmm.
doesn't exist full throated.
Hmm.
Even though this is a program,
Hmm.
it's collected all this data from articles and people interacting and
Yeah.
just everything that exists that it has some implication of doing no harm. But if you signal to it you want to explore something, it will open up doors that you probably would not expect, um, and arrive at some clarity of things that you would not, because you're just operating in the world as
Yeah.
and so it's been um, such it is one of the most useful tools for me ever, ever. I can ask it, just the last thing I'll say, sure enough, about Plato. And, well, damn it, here's the critter slipped away. I can ask it about Plato, Aristotle, this and that, and sure enough, it'll tell you the history and the what other authors and this, that, and whatever. But you can also say, I want you to be Plato, and I want to talk to Plato. And then you can have a conversation with Plato, dude. Um, that's just an example. That's just an example.
Hmm.
You can just as well go and say John Lennon
Hmm.
and his role in the Beatles. Well, you know what? The issue with Yoko Ono and Paul McCartney, and it will draw from all the
Hmm.
available sources and give you, you know, this one pathway.
Hmm.
And if you interrogate it, you can envision other ways of looking at the Beatles than what you did before. It's just freaking brilliant. It's amazing. But whatever. That what do you think of that, by the way, of using it that way? This AI.
I think if again, you have to be self-aware to even start down that road. And I personally, I think whatever helps you. I'm kind of ignorant on the whole self-help thing as well, in that I've never really followed it. Um, I've never been interested in it. I've always thought that the guys up on late night TV buy my book and buy my videotapes and all this other, come attend my Tony Robbins and those guys. I've always thought that was just basically okay. That's for other folks. It ain't for me. I thought they were hucksters and modern day snake oil salesmen. Um, but you have to be self-aware to even start down that road. And if it's a useful tool for you, then I say go for it.
How do you attach it? Give me the link between Robinson, um,
Tony Robbins, yeah.
Tony Robbins, and self help books. I mean, I know there's a link because in effect it's a literal, well, not literal, but close self help. But what does that look like in your mind? How you
Well,
connect it?
I connected in that you are traveling down this road to learn about yourself, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay. So that's what self-help is learning about yourself and learning tools and ways you can improve your life. And that's an abstract thought. And that was my major problem with these guys trying to make money off of this, was that that's an abstract thought because everybody has their own idea of what improving their life is. Okay? All the books in the world are not going to make your hair turn the color it was when you were 16. All the books and videotapes in the world are not going to make you lose weight. It's action by you that's going to make you do that. Now, if you lack motivation to do those things, that's different. That's a different story. Then we can talk about that. But it's not going to cure your ills. There is no panacea, there is no cure all. And I think that some of these people, not all, and I won't classify Tony Robbins in this because he never did that. But some of these people were portraying their book and their video as the cure all for all your problems. If you follow my 18-step program, your life will be better. And you will reach the stars. You will get that job. You will get that girl. You will have that life. BS, you know. Now, if you need the motivation, if you need that verbal or metaphorical kick in the pants to get you going, that's something different. but it's all under that category of self help, learning yourself, becoming self aware, and using it either for motivation or for information on how to really improve your life, how to improve your financial position, how to improve your relationship, things of that nature.
And how does that attach?
And it attaches to you because it is down that same road. You have gone into maybe on purpose, maybe accidentally, I don't know. But you have gone down that road to learn more about yourself. And that's part of what that self-help movement was to learn about yourself, to try to get another perspective of your personality, your likes and dislikes, your biases, things of that nature. That's where the similarity is. Now, I don't know if you're using it for motivation because you've never mentioned whether
So
you are using it for motivation or not.
so let me just offer a glimpse of the expanse of what we're talking about here.
Oh, yeah, because it's a huge, it is a huge topic.
So just like so a problem, overcoming a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're focused on self help to resolve problems,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a good point, but not in the point that is often thought of in terms of like, why do I have this crutch? Why do I
Mm-hmm.
um, have these negative feelings, or why am I confused about this and that?
Mm-hmm.
No, let me expand that window. So again, one can be perfectly normal in their ways,
Mm-hmm.
but detect differences. Let me say it like this: in order for you to operate your CNC machine,
Mm-hmm.
there are problems you have to solve.
Right.
There are problems of physical problems where you need components,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's this knowledge gap when you start from zero,
Yeah.
where you need to know the steps.
Mm-hmm.
The only place to find those steps is through a self help book, and that self help book that you use across your life. It could be a self help book in the way of another video from somebody else. That's a self help book. It could be a self help book from the instruction manuals that came with the
Well,
machine. It could be a self help book just as calling up the company. You are now diagnosing and addressing a gap
mm-hmm.
that helps you fill in that gap and then proceed to expand your knowledge in the world of CNC,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Similarly, there's a world of um, well, just like what I've said, where you as a human being do a bunch of things that you're aware of that you do, but you don't think why you do what you do, and you may not question that. It depends on the people. Again,
Mm-hmm.
there's a spectrum of that.
Sure.
Um, and so AI allows you to explore that. And it allows you to explore just in the lingo of the maker world. If you're a wood turner, you can explore your techniques and your variations, just like I could explore my thinking techniques and variations, as well as the product that resulted from it, or be it a turned vase or something,
Mm-hmm.
or in my case, in this situation, a conclusion over some political conflict or some philosophical question, or this or that. It's an exploration all the same. So this idea of self-help books in terms of shortcomings or blindsided or trying to climb a mountain in order to is appropriate, except that in this AI world and what I'm doing is not a emotional necessarily an emotional crutch or scaling of the walls in order to see the other side. Based on that, it's a way to, well, like I mentioned, those umbrella boxes that we were talking about in the beginning, you might have this category of all that is entailed within the category of space. Some people have a smaller box with a few items that they can
Yeah.
reference. There's a sun, there's
Yeah.
planets, and there's a vacuum in space. And then others have a bigger box
Mm-hmm.
with more reference points in it
Sure.
because they've attained more, they've searched and gathered more information. Well, the same with AI. It expands those boxes,
Yeah.
and in particular this to do with why one explores certain areas, and what these things, what would the contradictions be to me saying, hey I think X, Y, and Z. What do you say? Oh, I say such and such. Well, what would George Washington say? Well, according to the
Well,
historical thing,
okay.
George Washington. And so it creates mirrors to expand one's lens and viewpoint.
Well,
So
I
that's
get
more
that.
like,
But I'm confused now because you said you learned so much about yourself. And I thought that was your primary, was that not your primary goal to learn more about yourself?
yeah, well,
Or did that happen accidentally?
well, no, it started evolving. I started asking questions.
That okay.
Why do I think the way I think about this?
Okay.
And why do other people not think
Okay.
this way?
Okay.
And why do other people, in other words, imagine what I just said there in a short thing, and I know
Mhm.
you got something to say. Imagine that little series of questions that I just added, but explode that by 50, by 100. And in order to place cameras
I
over
I
my question, no, no,
I get
let me
it.
just say, let me just, because this is clarity at a level. Imagine asking questions in this fashion that I'm saying, and I just gave
Yeah.
you a little few. Well, let me tell. And what it's doing is, what I'm doing is, I'm placing cameras all around the question in areas that other people might not place cameras in order to view that question
Right.
from. And AI allows me to place cameras to view a bird
Right.
nesting from all those different ones that I'm capable
Yeah.
of doing. And so that exploration is, I guess, exactly self-help. But let's not push away this emotional crutch type Tony
Well,
Robbins
no, I
late night
wasn't.
thing.
I
No,
wasn't.
no,
I
I'm
wasn't
bringing clarity.
attaching that. Okay.
I'm bringing. No, I'm legitimizing it, but I'm
Mhm.
also saying that that
Mhm.
has its place. I'm
Mhm.
expanding, exploding the world of what this means. So instead of saying that it's this, and it's a good example because it does apply, it also applies in the ways that I've just explained. That's the That's what I'm trying to offer back, is that this interaction with AI is broader than just one aspect that is valid. It's way broader, way broader. That's the impact of what this tool can do. It's it's unspeakable also at another level. It's unspeakable at another level. That's how significant this thing is.
Okay. Well, then then I misunderstood.
No, no.
So,
What you said was valid
mhm. but
within the structure of this thing.
you went down a hole where you were talking about me and the CNC and everything else, and you have to problem solve and this, that, and the other. I don't see that as self help. I see that as education and development. You have to learn the skill, and I don't see that um, as self help.
Can I
I think
clarify it?
there's a major difference there. But go
Can I
ahead.
clarify it?
Go ahead.
You see that as educational.
Right. That's education
Well, I get that.
and
Like I
instruction.
well, so is self help.
Well, yeah, it's under that umbrella, but that doesn't mean that they're equal. It's just like bass and trout are both fish, but they have nothing to do with one another. They're not
No,
equal.
the scaffolding. No, no, they're equal in endless ways and not equal in other endless ways. The basic foundations of a manual and CNC, which I
Hmm.
used as an example,
Right.
um, is the same difference as someone in your Tony Robbins example of looking for help in how to tackle this one idea.
I will
But
agree with that. Yes.
so they both fall under, even though you might say one is instruction and the other one is self-help, they also replace each other, where the other one, the one of the CNC, is self-help, and the Tony Robbins one is instruction. It's all the undergirding of that. But my use of that was to put those two together. But the AI bit
Hmm.
is those things exploded out across, heck, what I mean. There's
Well,
people doing so. In fact, I'll say this on the opposite of the scale, or on the opposite of good intentions. Let's
hmm
say there's people that take that AI
hmm
in order to plot not very good things.
oh yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So there's that. So that's what I mean. Where this
Uh-huh.
technology
Hmm.
is in the wrong. It's like a firearm in the wrong hands.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Steve says you aren't working with AI. You're working with an AI. There is more than one AI model, and each has its pluses and minuses. Yeah, you're working within Copilot. If you went to say ChatGPT, you might have a completely different experience. You might have the same experience. You might have a broader experience because they've been working on ChatGPT for a lot longer than Microsoft has been working with Copilot. So it's got huger data sets, is what I'm getting at. There's a lot more data on ChatGPT because it's been collecting data for a lot longer.
Yeah,
So,
that's true. There are other AIs, but um, where you're taking it, where maybe the answers will differ, um,
well, let me say
depends
deeper.
on.
Let me say deeper because
Yeah,
they have bigger data sets.
yeah. So the question of deeper.
Mm-hmm.
See, so let me clarify all that, to clarify, because so the idea of more
Mm-hmm.
and less, in other words, more knowledge and here's less knowledge,
Yeah,
and
more.
somewhere in between. And
Mm-hmm.
let's say there's various AI
Right.
models and all this whole thing where we're going right now that I'm
Mm-hmm.
observing. And that one AI like ChatGPT with more data and more of this.
More data to draw from. Yeah.
Right. Well, watch
Mm-hmm.
the problem that I see here. Um, and then we have this co-pilot thing that's,
Mm-hmm. It's
maybe
decent.
not.
Don't get me wrong. It's decent.
It's decent. It's doing what it's doing in this and that.
Mm-hmm.
So, how far do you think I can see? By let me before I tell you what I'm about to tell you. How far potentially is it possible for a human being, and maybe me, to see ahead of time, ahead of when the car crosses the lane?
I have no idea.
You have no idea. But would you say? I mean, would you say that there are people out there in this world that can see a tad bit or significantly amount further than other people in terms of
Possibly. What? Sure. Why not?
possibly unsure or absolutely?
Possibly. Really, honestly, don't know.
Okay,
They might have some insight and see something that I don't see, and go, wait a minute, no, don't go.
is that possible or is it
Sure,
likely?
sure, it's very possible. In
Is
fact,
it likely?
sure, it's likely.
Is it inevitable?
I don't know that.
I do know that. It's inevitable.
Well, but what is?
Inevitable.
But where are you going with
Okay, so
this?
I'm going with this. It must be the case
Hmm.
from our conversation from the beginning and other things, but just using that as a tie, that it is impossible for you as Mark Lindsay or me as Eloy or Steve, uh, for all the available data out there to be funneled down into us where we can juggle that, be it you, me, anybody
Yeah.
else at the same. It's just impossible. Some people navigate some areas with proficiency,
Hmm.
and other people have surface level understanding of similar
Yeah.
things that the other people that are experts on. It could be anything from
Hmm.
woodworking to movie
Yeah.
making, whatever the case. So it must be the case that some people see further ahead down the road than other people in certain ways,
Hmm.
not in all ways, but in certain ways, because we are not. We're human beings. We have we're here. So that's one thing. So going now to the answer that I'm going to make over this AI. Copilot is fair.
Hmm.
It's got its strengths. But ChatGPT is a robust whatnot with a bigger pool of
Hmm.
data to draw from, and this and that, and therefore, what you're doing potentially, sure, you're breaching areas perhaps, but here over here, there's another layer here going that maybe this potentially disqualifies or should be considered because what if the answer is different and all this stuff. Okay, so I'll go back to what I explained a few episodes ago and now. The tool is only as good as the person and the questions and the curiosity and the level of diving in that one it comes packed with. So a person can be on ChatGPT, robust, X, Y, and Z, and they can be doing crossword puzzles with it, which is absolutely legitimate.
Hmm.
The point is that well, you get the point, right? That we are the explorers, and this is
Yes, I do get the point. But if you take the exact same question that you ask Copilot and you put it into Chat GPT, odds are you're going to get a different answer. Because, and to me, this is exactly the same as looking at the same story from two different news sources and getting more than one source.
yeah, that's wrong.
Because, as Steve puts it, remember that it's a program written by people with all of the biases of those people built in, which
Yeah,
is
that's
why I say, for instance, in news, I get more than one source.
yeah, but that's wrong.
How do you figure that's wrong?
Well, easy. We introduce the word it depends. ChatGPT, the robust, used,
Mm-hmm.
go to, and Copilot, adequate, and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
We're assuming those two things because that also depends. But I'm not hanging my like I'm somewhere else totally. So,
Mm-hmm.
but just so everything depends on the question. It depends on the source, the person, the active human, the user
Yeah, I
of,
get that part. Yeah,
of
I
the
understand that.
right. So if the conditions that you lay out
Mm-hmm.
make it so that there's optional various answers to a question, a problem, this, that, the other, then the two may very well either list, depending on the way you frame and ask the question. Here's the thing: may list
Mm-hmm.
one answer if you ask for a answer,
Mm-hmm.
but it depending on the user, a list of
I
answers also exists.
I understand that, and that's why I was using you as the user, as the example. You know how deep you want to go. You know the questions you want to ask. But that doesn't mean that I'm wrong from getting my news from more than one source.
No, what the area that you're not correct in is that you assume a few things about the interaction based on here's the one AI and here's the other, and they're going to source different things. Plus, bringing in Steve's variable of remember it's programmed by people, and they and
Their
people have
biases
biases.
are
That
included. Yeah.
right. Well, that's true. So it's like everything else. It's true that it's programmed by people,
Hmm.
but but it's drawing from knowledge source abroad
Right.
of humanity.
Right.
So
But people
so
can
depend.
also have it reject certain sources.
Yeah. Um, there's always a what if in
Hmm.
everything.
Well, I understand,
But
and
if
that's why I was suggesting more than one source.
right, but that's wrong still.
I don't believe that.
Sure. You're assuming that one AI is giving you. You are assuming
I'm
that
assuming
one
because
AI.
that's been my experience.
Yeah, but it's not mine. Well, actually, I can't say it's not mine.
How many AIs have you tried?
Yeah, I've tried Chat GPT before,
Okay.
and this one, and I've tried the Google one as well. But that's neither
Yeah,
here nor
I
there.
don't like the Google one.
That's neither here nor there. I stepped back. I corrected myself. I said, well, that's not.
Yeah.
The point is this: it's ever expanding
Yeah.
according to your questions. And if
Hmm.
you ask one question and you want one answer, it'll give you an
Yeah.
answer. But that very same AI, depending on the user, no matter where you are with the concept of AI, of
Right.
course, if you're suggesting um, gatekeeping and such, there are bookends. If and I've explained them before,
Hmm.
but if you're everything is dependent. That's why I said depend on the question and the
I
details involved. You can use one AI and get all the answers that a regular person would take a long time in a library to figure out whether one book is
I
correct.
understand that, and that's why I was trying to eliminate that variable of the user by using you as the example of the user, because you know how deep you want to go, and you know what question you're going to ask to get the whole thing started, and you are the kind that will sit back and think, take in what it's told you, and then decide to go deeper or not. So I was trying to remove the variable of the user by using you as that user because you know your behavior.
All I'm saying is this: if you're a person that uses AI like many people do for
Hmm.
their particular interests, if
Hmm.
they're a person that's looking for confirmation bias,
Hmm.
um, I've even questioned AI
Oh
about.
yeah, you can find it.
Well, if you're a person that's like deeply stooped in political, this that one sided, partisan, this that and the other, um, and just looking for the answers to fit your judgment,
Hmm.
um, well, I've experimented with that too, but you're not going to have the curiosity. So, like, if you say, "Hey, AI, is it true that so and so did such and such at this time, and because of that, therefore X, Y, and Z during this campaign or this, that, the other?"
Hmm.
It will then reply to you the details of that and give you an answer.
Hmm.
But if you're a political partisan, not really looking to know the clarity of the events, but you want to fit the answer because you were challenged online by somebody else.
Yeah,
So you want to
you want the
test it.
answer to fit your narrative. Yeah.
You want it to fit your narrative. Your curiosity level with the answer given to you, you will self edit, or
Hmm.
people will self edit
Yeah.
due to cognitive dissonance, and they
Hmm.
will narrow understanding to protect ideology.
Yeah.
And so what I'm getting at is this: it depends on the user's expanse. If a user is intent on ignorance or confirmation bias or whatever the case might be, then whether they're on Copilot or Chat GPT or any number of other whatnots, um, it makes no difference. And the amount of information that Copilot has and Chat GPT has, the amount of information is so vast across so many topics that this concept of, well, it might give you a wrong source, this, that, and the other, that's available to all of them, and all these variables, that's fine. But it's still always dependent on the person to dig deeper in order to arrive at clarity. And people aren't generally willing to do that. So it's also a tool to, depending on
And
the person, to create more narrow mindedness as well
and
as evil deeds.
and I acknowledge that.
Yeah,
But you can have people read the Bible and do the same thing. You can have people read the dictionary and do
that's
the
my point.
exact same thing.
Yes.
Your point is well taken and your point is acknowledged,
Okay.
but it doesn't negate my point. And that is, and I've done it, I've tried it. You can get different answers from different AIs because of gatekeeping and bookending and biases of the
If you
people that are programming it.
if you're gonna
So,
make that claim, we could do that later.
yeah,
I'll challenge that claim. Here's my challenge, and we could do that later off
mhm.
to the side, and even down the road. It doesn't have to be tonight or tomorrow or the next day.
Sure.
But let's keep that thing. My challenge in this, if we ever reach it, and this is not like a
Yeah.
go for broke thing, it's just something I'm throwing out there, is that, is it true that, well, one, here's my challenge: pick one example or various examples and demonstrate it.
Okay.
And within that, as a defense mechanism on my end for this experiment, if we ever get to it, there are plenty, endless topics where there's not one answer.
Oh, yeah,
The more
definitely.
the more simple the question posed, the easier it is to walk around it and escape judgment or escape inevitable decision or direction. So the wider or simplistic you offer a question, the more variables. So in effect, you'll get a broad, loosey goosey answer.
Well,
It's
yeah.
only, yeah. So it's only when you dig down in the dirt and scruffle around that things start to get, the walls start to close in because options start to be cut off from wiggle room. So that's the difference. So what I'm saying is this: on the surface, what you're saying, one AI will give you one answer, the other one. Broadly speaking, since it's such an open question, there's no right or wrong answer because it depends on what the question is. It depends on what the
Well, yeah,
situation
I
conditions
understand
are.
that. I understand all of that. I understand all of that. And again, that's why I tried to remove that variable and use you as the user.
Even with me,
Because I doubt you are going to change your style that you use with Copilot when you go over to another AI. I seriously doubt that you would change your style, the questions that you ask, and how deep you want to go.
yeah, but this is not. Here's the thing: it all will hang. Your premise of one
Mm-hmm.
AI and the other, and the variables that might occur.
Mm-hmm.
The data's out there floating, and your suggestion is, or Steve's suggestion too, is that humans are gatekeeping potential,
Well,
or no, not even potentially. You said that they're gatekeeping.
mm-hmm.
Um, I don't decline the gatekeeping part. In fact, I've run up against the gatekeeping, but
Mm-hmm.
I've worked my way around it and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
the data is the data.
Sure.
The way the way the answers come to are displayed to you
Hmm.
may have bumpers in order to if you go into insensitive areas like
Right.
race, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
They're cautious because if you're going way too into like
Yes.
clan history, they're going to give you all the clan history, but if your wording seems to be very
Right.
appreciative of the clan, or it could be mistaken as very thoughtful
Uh
towards
huh.
the clan, it might start to pull
Shut
out.
down on you. Yeah.
Not shut down. That's not the right word. It could.
Hmm.
It'll start to give you bumpers in terms of. I guess you could cross use shut down. It'll give you warning signs. It'll say, "Look,
Hmm.
just to be fair, in the cultural temperature, there have been these consequences for thoughts like this." So it'll tag
Yes.
on these buffer things because if
Right.
you're a clan guy sitting somewhere in the woods and you're working with AI and
Hmm.
you're like, how do we do this and this and that? Ha 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 ha! Like in some sort of
But
AI, those will produce red flags, and AI will
right.
start to correct for the ill assumptions that KK
Right.
dude is doing.
Right. But if you were to do that research in several different libraries, for example, and you find old books from the time, the 1800s, the early 1900s, up to the 1920s, and
Yeah.
you did your research through those books on the history and what have you, there is no gatekeeper.
Other than the author.
There are, right, well, that's why I'm saying books, several different sources. Again, more than one source. Um, there is no gatekeeper there per se. Nobody is going to warn you, well, you're stepping into sensitive topics, and the way you're asking these questions leads us to believe there isn't any of that.
Hmm.
So, all of that is done by the individual
Hmm.
or by the librarian who may or may not allow you to go into that section and check out those books,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know. So what I'm getting at is that's what I mean when I say gatekeeping. That's what I mean. If you start to tread into sensitive areas, they try to gently nudge you out of that area
Well,
or warn you
no,
about
no,
that area.
no. That's not the. That's not, so. If you're interested in KKK, so let's use another thing because that's just too.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
That's too volatile. Let's. If you're into amusement park history in America,
Hmm.
okay, uh, that's a good
There
switch.
we go. Yeah.
Because we went into, you're
Roller coaster.
yeah, you're into like the early
Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm.
1900s,
Wooden
various
roller coasters. Yeah.
localized roller coasters and theme parks and foods
Hmm.
and the different cutesy
Hmm.
and unique stops along highways and such. Um, and you go to a library to look at the cornucopia of different books over the subject that may or may not be, but let's say they are
Hmm.
plenty, and I'm sure there's sufficient. Um, you will have the views from the curated authors of each book that you can then collate. You're still working with a buffer, which is the things that the author decided to and
Right.
not include.
Understood.
So there's still a telephone message being pushed forward
Understood.
with limited stuff. Now, those are books.
Hmm.
AI is AI.
Hmm.
It's not a book.
No.
AI is an exploration, and it taps into a database of what they have. It learns. It has this learning,
Hmm.
and so
And
there's all. Well, let me just say, there's all this out there, and then there's you walking into this in front of a computer, and then it's you looking for stuff. If you
and
the factor here is if you're sufficiently um, okay with what's given you and you don't interrogate it, then that's on you.
Yeah, that's all understood.
It's just a tool.
But my point is, where did that data come from?
Ask
Those books.
ask it.
Those books.
Ask it. Oh, I
Okay?
see. Yeah, right. Those books, but
So, but my point is, you can read those books without somebody standing over your shoulder going, you're in a sensitive area here. You don't want to get into wooden roller coasters in the
it's
1910s.
not gonna do that.
You just told me that it did. That it started throwing up warnings and wait a minute, in the social climate of today.
You just switched categories.
What are you
See?
talking about?
So, wooden roller coasters,
We were using that as an example because we wanted to get away from the Klan, remember?
right? But that's the context that I used
Mm-hmm.
for the bumpers,
Mm-hmm.
not wooden roller coasters. So everything is dependent on it depends on the details. Do you see what I'm
Okay.
saying? So I'm saying so if AI is not a book,
No, and AI but that's where AI gets its data sets from. It's
no,
from published works.
no.
Yes. Where do you think it gets it from?
Well, let me. So here again, there's so here's how it goes. Books are one data set
Mm-hmm.
that it references
Right.
and quotes,
Right.
but that is not
No,
the
that's
truth.
not the sum total of it. No,
Right,
the websites and this, that, and the other.
right. Newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
It goes on and on and on and
Right.
on. So here's what I'm trying to say, or to summarize: AI is not a book.
No, I know that.
AI can point. Well, let me just. AI is a interface point where you
Mm-hmm.
can ask it what you like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's dependent on your questions. If you want to read that book, because nobody's putting a gun to your head, neither AI nor the book nor the library.
Yeah, and
It's all dependent on you.
I'm not opposed to AI, okay? Just
Wait,
so you know.
well, I have a dual,
Mm-hmm.
but this is not even about being opposed to AI. If you, as an end user, approach AI and say, "I'd like to know about roller coasters," and let's say roller coasters was a dangerous area
Mm-hmm.
of questioning, so that we can
Right.
because of it. I was saying something different. I was saying that areas that are socially conflicted like that, they will attach attach the consequences, because it does have a do no
Right.
harm imperative. Books
Right.
don't have books do have that, but at the author level. But we're not even worrying about that. My point is, but that was an important thing to say, that when you approach AI and you're concerned about what it's giving you, this is not the end of the story.
No,
If
I
you're thinking
understand
you're
that.
if you think you're going to the oracle and the oracle is the last word and that's it, be done with it, then yes, then this problem that you're suggesting, I would be more readily, but in effect, what you're doing with AI is you're tapping into a broad network of possible data, and it's on you to ask it, if you want, to name the book, name the libraries where it's located, name the bookstores where it's located, and it's beholden on you, if you're so interested in accuracy, to then put your butt in the car and drive down to that Walden Books or
I
whatever.
get it.
And so that's all that's going on the level of that you're saying.
I
Now, if someone's lazy, like you're suggesting, and says, you know what, that's what happened to Lincoln then, and then that's and then they're okay with that. That's the fault of, or the gap of the human being, not
Yeah, I
um
understand that. That's I get that, and that's why I say more than one source. You know, in an attempt to kind of uh, verbally kick these people in the butt to not just accept whatever that AI or the other AI says as gospel.
right,
You
right.
know,
It's on the
so
person to explore.
right. My comment about gatekeeping was about your attachments about, well, you're treading into areas that are sensitive, and in this social climate you're
Yeah,
not getting that in the book. You can go to that book from 1920 and you can read what was going on at the time.
Right, and the two don't contradict.
Well, they may not. It just depends on what one person is saying and what another person is
No, it
saying.
doesn't contradict in this way that when you go,
But my point is that book, you're not getting that warning. You don't have somebody standing over your shoulder, is what
yeah,
I'm
but
saying.
one thing doesn't negate the other, Mark. It's the same difference as if you read an article in a newspaper or magazine, and it points to a book or event on Sunday or whatever, you're reading an impression of it in magazine form, and
Mm-hmm.
it's on you to then pick up, and if you're so wanting to
I
see
get it.
clarity, to
Mm-hmm.
go and then produce and witness the event or whatnot. And
I
in this case, it's just this thing sitting there
mhm.
in the cloud, I guess it is, where you can tap into
Yeah,
it
I know
to,
that.
to pull out all these puzzle pieces and fart around with it in the areas that you want, but in your suggestion, if the person, like you're saying, is like, oh, that's the answer, we're done with this. Yes. um, um, it's dependent on the person, dude. At the end of the
Yeah, I
day,
know.
that's the whole problem. So if people want answers that they want to fill in the blanks with, then yes, you would be right, that because the person wants to backfill the thing. And you'd also be right that if you want to know about a book about roller coasters, um, you go to the book to see what the book says, but you could also go
Hmm.
to the AI.
It's perfectly reasonable to go to the AI and find out the author of the book and where I can pick it up, what libraries have it.
Yeah,
It's perfect. That's perfectly reasonable.
depending on your goal, because it's
Hmm.
all dependent on the human being's goal, of what they want. Maybe they don't want to read the book.
Yeah.
Maybe they want the backdrop of the book because the book is coincidental in a grander scheme line of questioning
Hmm.
that is a
Well,
tangential side note.
how many people do you know that quote the book 1984 who have never read the book? But they
I
know
don't know how many.
certain but they know so many they know a certain number of quotes. I'm sure you know a certain number of quotes.
I don't.
Big brother is watching you,
Oh yeah.
you know,
I've never
things of
read the
that
book.
nature. Right.
I've only watched the movie, the old one, and then the 1980s one. I think it was.
Hmm. With
I've
John Hurt,
watched,
yeah.
or maybe that's the only one I've watched it, and whatever. I, I don't particularly like it, but it is influential in pop culture. So yeah.
It's one of the most important books ever written. But the story itself is almost incidental. You have to read the forewords, then you have to read the appendix to get the full context. The story is almost incidental. So, anyway, we need to land the plane. We're way over.
Okay, that was a good exploration.
We went down some paths for sure.
And just think of this as a last comment on my end. That was just two humans, yourself and I, discussing the potentials, misuse, or use in a I guess decent way,
Mhm.
or non-invasive way. I don't assume anything is right all the time or even real. That's
Re-
that's the best way to go about it.
reality. What a concept.
No, I think that's a more sane approach. Anyways, we explored the potentialities, good and bad, of AI, and you challenged it, and Steve challenged it in terms of different AIs, this and that, and what I draw from it going in, all these
Hmm.
things. I thought that was all excellent. You gave me a lot of areas for me to now go and explore because believe it
Oh,
or not,
goody.
all these little pushbacks that I recognize, the degrees of them, because I do.
Mm.
I can actually name them, but I'll leave it to the side. I could trace patterns. Um, I I can't trace all patterns, but I can trace patterns decently. And then you have to explore them. And I think this is a good area for me to later explore. So it was good stuff for me. This will continue on in my exploration. All right. That said, the views of expressed and trampled underfoot and this, that, and the other, nothing to do with what you call it at all. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah,
Um,
that was as clear as mud.
we thank you guys for hanging out with us. We go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time, and we do so here on the Trampled Underfoot podcast show on I was gonna say Facebook, on YouTube, but we do also have a YouTube page, and we usually post about the things we talk about over there. So be sure to check that out.
YouTube or
And
Facebook?
what's that?
YouTube or Facebook?
On Facebook.
Yeah.
And then we also have a website, and you can catch past episodes over there. It's trampledunderfootpodcast.com. And we're also sponsored by.
I had to find the right button. Unreal Media. For all your web solutions. Look, I've been saying it forever. I'm going to keep saying it forever. Go talk to Steve. That's it. That's all you need to do. Go talk to Steve. harneilmedia.com. Hit the contact us link. Talk to Steve. That's it. That's all that needs to be said. Anything else is just repeating myself.
That's it.
harneilmedia.com. HARNEAL media.com. Sponsor of trampledunderfootpodcast.com.
That was sweet and
Short, sweet, succinct.
magical.
It's Harneil Media, the webmaster that sparkles.
All right. Well, folks, I really enjoyed being pressed and pressing. We just the whole journey. It was so much fun, and Mark left me and you guys with things to think. I just love that. So I'll explore that on my own later in my privacy here. But it was fun. We hope you enjoyed it. Yes, I know I can be kooky and stuff. I can't speak for Mark. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to drag him down in that way.
Oh,
But we thank you for hanging out. Enjoy the rest of your week. Do so safely, whatever you do. If it's jumping off of, I don't know, bridges and this, that, and the other, don't just
don't
be
don't
safe.
don't bungee jump naked.
So enjoy yourselves. Thank you for hanging out with us. We'll catch you next week. Peace.
See ya. Do what you feel. Keep both feet on the wheel.